everybody. We are at the Something Wicked Film Festival. I think that may be the first time I've gotten it right. I always want to say something else. And we're talking about screenwriting, somewhat of an important aspect of filmmaking. Got to have a script in order to have, well, usually, most people have to have a script before they can make a film. And my two experts with me this evening.
Temper.
I knew you were going to laugh. I'm trying to draw
please.
a laugh from this guy. Yeah,
okay.
Rob Pralgo is with us, and
I
Keith
can tell you
Brooks.
what not to do.
Yay!
So anyway, before we get started, Rob, tell the folks who are going to be watching this, and the folks who are out here listening to this, what you do.
Hey guys.
Who you are.
My name is Rob Pralgo. I'm an actor. I've been studying and pursuing and working at the craft of acting for about 30 years now. I'm old, and everything I do is a means to an end for finding acting work. Everything I do. It's why I wake up in the morning. It's why I scratch my butt. It's why I eat food. It's all as a means to an end for finding work for acting. So screenwriting, sometimes we have to create our own work as actors, as filmmakers. So I have dabbled in the craft of screenwriting, and it's very important, and I put it up there on a pedestal with great writers like Keith Brooks, and Keith Brooks, because Keith Brooks is here.
I don't know how to follow "scratch my butt" for acting, but that's, it's good.
I think you know how to follow it.
Yeah, scratch my testicles. I scratch my testicles for my craft.
That's right.
So my name's Keith Brooks. I'm an actor as well. I co-own a company called Beamed It Productions, and so we produce whatever the hell we want to produce, like weird commercials, features, shorts, and through that I've started writing, screenwriting and stuff like that, and then I've gotten jobs doing doctoring of scripts and then writing and stuff like that. The end. A screenwriting panel and I can't talk. Go ahead.
We work well together. You're a script doctor.
That's
I'm a
right.
script patient.
Yay.
My scripts are awful and sick, and I take them to you to fix them. It's great. We work
I was going to
well
say, and
together.
the script
Is
doctoring
this thing
thing,
on?
that is a premium component in this business. I get more work doing that than I do, trying to sell my own scripts.
Yeah.
So it's a good way to make a living. But let's find out. I want to pick your brains a little bit as how you got started in screenwriting. I mean, what was it that drew you to it, and it sort of hooked you? I think we all have that moment.
Well,
Butt
just for
scratcher.
me, again, a means to an end for work. When you start off as an actor and you say, I want to act, you have to find outlets to perform the craft. Often, if you're not doing improv, that starts with a script. And even improv, you're talking about circumstances. So we need script work, and if nobody else is going to hire you, the only way you get better at anything is to do it. So you have to find outlets to act. So you start writing. Whether it's good or bad, you start writing. The only way to get better at something is to be willing to fall on your face and fall down and understand that you're not going to be great at anything at first, maybe ever, but again, it's a means to an end for acting. So festivals like this are wonderful for that because you get together with directors who want to direct and writers who want to write and actors who want to act and DPs who want to shoot and lighters who want to light, and everybody gets together because they're looking for work and they create together. So somebody writes something and they create it and winds up at a festival like this. That's how I got into writing. Again, I don't consider myself a writer necessarily. I write. Screenwriters write regularly and consistently and put out product. I write as a means to an end for work. But again, if you want to be good at anything, you study it. You read the great books. You take screenwriting courses. You write, and you talk to those who have done it well and done it effectively, and you be open to be judged and to learn. But you put it out there. Again, as an actor, we wrote, we performed it, we judged it. You write, you perform it, you judge it. And that's sort of how I got from A to wherever the hell I am right now. As a student, really.
And I think, I can't believe I'm saying this to compliment Rob Pralgo, is one of the things that I think does make you an asset for screenwriting is you have a good understanding of story, which is a crucial thing to have when going into screenwriting. And it comes from watching movies. It comes from reading books. I got started early on. I've always been writing ever since I was a kid. When I was in kindergarten, I entered a Young Authors Fair contest and wrote a poem, and I won the national contest. And so I have this poem about a bug falling on a guy's nose in the Smithsonian, which is I never got laid from that one, but
Not yet.
Not yet.
The night is young,
See
my
how
friend.
the night goes.
People are going to be watching this, so who knows?
But to me, all of writing has always been the same. It's always been trying to push my limits, challenge my own creativity. But even being an actor, I got started specifically writing screenplays, but like Rob said, because every actor goes through that slump in their life where they're not being cast, where they're not getting the auditions. So fuck that. Let me go make my own opportunities. I don't know if we can curse, but fuck it, we're gonna curse.
That's YouTube. I don't
Yeah,
think
that's
they could.
awesome. Yeah. Thank you for subscribing to YouTube Red. Anyway, so that was my sort of initiative. Was I wanted to have a creative output, and I always feel that the writing process is the same as the acting process. I have to know the objective, the motivations, the tactics, the arc, what's all going to happen. The same preparation that I put into my character, I have to put into the story, and each one of those individual characters. So it seemed like a natural extension of that part of the craft. You know what I mean?
Your first script. You remember your first script?
My first full movie script, yeah, it was because I wanted to learn more, so I decided to adapt something that somebody else had written and try it just as a challenge to learn the technique of it, right? Because they say you learn from the masters. Well, let me take a story that's already constructed and try to flesh it out with my own tone. And so it was The Little Prince by Antoine Saint-Exupéry, which is a wonderful children's book. And so I made this 260-page piece of shit out of it, but it taught me so much. It taught me, the format. It taught me the style. It taught me what worked and what didn't, and that's an important thing. I think in any craft, one of the most important elements is to fail. Once you fail, you learn, and that's, to me, that's what that script was. Yeah.
You remember your first round?
No.
You don't.
I don't remember the first thing I wrote necessarily. I remember the first thing that I finally said, well, I want to make a movie. I think we have the opportunity to possibly do something here. I had a friend in the past was a martial artist. And I thought, I got an idea for a story. It's simple. What are our special effects? We don't have any money. What do we have? You're a very good martial artist. So that's a special effect in itself. That's production value on camera. We could find locations, production value. So we came up with a story. I wanted to be a lead in it. He wanted to be a lead in it. So, okay, two guys, we sort of looked alike. Let's play brothers. So out of the tools that we had, out of the pieces that we had, we constructed a story based around two brothers. One's a badass martial artist. One's a pussy. He gets kidnapped. He basically goes through a gauntlet. Come hell or high water, I'm going to rescue my brother. Simple story. You've heard it 1,000 times, but it's what we had. And let's play with it. And So we sat down, we started writing it, hammering, writing, rewriting, hammering, rewriting. We were going to shoot it here. He got the idea, why don't we shoot it in Thailand?
That's right.
So I said, okay, we found out that the dollar was very valuable in Thailand. We can get a little more bang for our buck. Went to Thailand. He went over there a couple weeks in advance. I took the script based on things he was sending me back, had to rewrite the entire script based upon what we had available to us in Thailand. So we didn't necessarily start with a story that time. We started with, what do we have that's valuable, that we find that might be valuable on camera that ultimately we can sell? So let's work in reverse. It's not the idea for a story. We have these pieces. What piece of art can I construct? We have this, and then we started writing. What's the story? What's the main arc? What kind of log line can we create out of this? And that's sort of where we went with it. For better or worse, that's what we did.
If I can piggyback on that too, I think an important thing there is necessity is the mother of invention at times, but also inspiration can come from anywhere. The first script I wrote that we actually produced, that was actually made, was a similar story about brothers. It's not similar at all.
But brothers,
but it's brothers fighting martial arts sort of shit. Here's my story. So Wesley Snipes was in Atlanta.
He's so competitive. My brother's story is better than your brother's story.
So Wesley Snipes was in Atlanta, and he was going to do his comedic version of The Expendables. And they were going to have all these martial artists come to town. Jackie Chan, Jet Li, Chuck Norris, all that sort of stuff. They were going to shoot a movie here. Me and my friend at the time, Trevor Garner, we later became business partners, and we co-owned this company together. We decided we were going to go audition for this movie. They had open auditions, and they said you can come do a demo or you can do a scene, whatever you want. So we said, wouldn't it be funny if we did a comedy scene and we pretended we were little kids fighting over a Wesley Snipes action figure? So we choreographed this whole scene and go and do it in front of Wesley Snipes, not knowing the man would be there. And he was terrifying. And so we do this whole scene making fun of Wesley Snipes for fucking Wesley Snipes. And the next day he gets arrested and goes to jail for tax evasion. So that movie doesn't get made. So we're like, well, fuck. But we have this cool idea. Let's just do something with it ourselves. And so from that choreographed fight scene, we fleshed out a script and then made a movie called Tu Wong with Kung Fu. Thanks for everything, a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old. So yeah, that's the end of that. Yeah.
By the way, look for Blood Ties. That's
right. It's one of 12 different movies called Blood Ties. You can find
that's
that.
right.
Amazon,
Yeah.
Amazon
I
Prime.
always thought you should have changed the name to Dude, Where's My Brother? But that's just me.
I think he says it 19 times in the movie. Where's my brother?
He says that
Where's my
all
brother?
the time.
Where's my brother? He found me.
That's how I get to
Got my ass
I
kicked.
met this guy through that film.
Oh, that's right. That's
Because
right.
I
He played
thought
the DJ.
I'd been cast in another film, and they said, "Hey, you want to come down and play a DJ?" And I was like, "Yeah, I
you
could
were
do
DJ
that."
in that movie.
So, yeah.
But again, it's screenwriting, a lot like acting, a lot like any art form, is you're not born with it. I know very few people who can just crap out a great script. There's structure involved with anything, with any art form, and I think if you're an aspiring writer, the only way to do it is to do it. You can read as many books as you want, you can take as many courses as you want, until you're doing it. And again, I don't like the word fail. You have to let your work be judged. I think like anything, you can go off and use your own inspirations and your instincts once you learn the structure. Once you learn the craft, you can break the rules. I think you have to know story structure and understand what is called for in each medium. The difference between TV, film, and theater. There's similar structures, but there are also different structures. And I think once you learn those, you can put your story into any of those mediums.
And I think it's too, like, you have to figure out what works for you within your style. And it could be different for each project. Like, there have been ways that I tackle specific scripts that are different than the ways I tackle other scripts because that individual story warrants that. You know what I mean? Yeah. Whether it's because of research or because I have to be in a specific mindset or whatever, you don't know how to get through the script until you start trying to get through the script.
Were you guys storytellers as kids? Like, one of the things that drew me to writing, and I don't do it as much as I'd like, was that, scouts and stuff sitting around the campfire telling stories, ghost stories and stuff. That taught me a lot about storytelling as far as what vehicles would work
I
and
found
not
myself
work.
drawn to storytellers.
Yeah.
I was a very good listener. I was a big reader, I was a shy kid. I didn't find myself entertaining doing the storytelling, but I was drawn, and still to this day I'm drawn to good storytellers. And I have friends who are fantastic storytellers and really good writers, screenplays, plays, books, and it always I'm still amazed by it. Actually.
I got a lot louder really quickly. It was cool. Like I said, the poem thing. When I was in like 3rd grade, I was still like writing short stories and stuff like that. And I had this teacher named Miss Barton who decided after lunch every day I would be able to tell a 15-minute story to the class. And so it started off as me reading stories that other people had written. I was just reading story time. And then I evolved, I guess, to start telling my own stories. And like I had central characters that I was like doing sequels to and all this sort of shit. But it was the time where I could gauge the audience's feedback. And I really credit that as being what turned me on. And as we say in the acting world, I caught the bug there because I was getting a reaction. And I could see that instant gratification of, oh, they laughed at this joke. Oh, these 3rd graders are scared. Whatever, from the story or just my wild gesticulation. But yeah, so from an early age, I was a storyteller. But I think, like Rob said, you can be born with a part of it, but you have to hone that skill. You have to keep going and diving into that. And I think pushing yourself, and then through doing that, you'll get better.
I think to piggyback on that, it's important to understand your strengths and weaknesses. The only way you find out what your strengths and weaknesses are by trying things, whatever craft that you're working out, be it acting, directing, writing. And you learn there are some people who write very well by themselves. I have a friend named Adam Norovich who was a fantastic writer. He doesn't want to hear from anybody else, and he sells scripts, and his stuff is, I've read 20 of his scripts, and I fly through them, and they're dynamite. I know people who write better as a team, separating up the scenes and working together. I'm one of those people that I became aware that I am a starter and not a finisher. I come up with ideas, I hammer an idea out, but I have to work with someone else who, maybe not necessarily the finisher, but pushes me through, because I'll sit in one scene for 42 pages. I'll start a scene, it'll be a dialogue scene for 42 pages, and my partner will go, this has got to be about 90 seconds.
Yeah.
You know, and so I kind of get lost in the dialogue, where a writing partner, whoever I'm writing with, I'll make sure is more about the overall structure of the story, the super objective of the story, if you will. But you need to be aware, and you can still learn those things, but challenge yourself, but you know, be honest with yourself too. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And that's for any of the, if you're a director that's more technical, learn how to deal with actors. If you're an actor's director, learn how to be more technical. Anything like this in this craft. So.
Favorite genres? You guys have a favorite genre you like? You're more acclimated to writing than any others?
I find myself writing rom-coms, but go ahead. I find myself writing. You guys couldn't hear me? I find myself writing rom-coms. Ron-cons. It's Ron Clinton Smith, and they're comedies for Ron Clinton Smith. I write ron-coms.
In fact, Ron will be with us tomorrow.
That's right.
Yes, he'll be with us
I find
here
myself
tomorrow.
writing. I do write a little horror. I like horror. I like writing it, challenging myself to see if I can create a scare moment that's not a cheap scare moment, but I just like to write.
Yeah, I find myself like, I guess probably horror or like absurdity. Like sometimes I'm going to be shooting this thing that I wrote like next weekend about these acting students who kidnap Amy Adams so they can learn acting better, and it's sort of an absurd comedy sort of thing. But at the same time, I'm also doing this podcast that's like a 1930s murder mystery in a world full of monsters, and it's in Chinese, and I don't speak Chinese. Yeah. So, but to me, it's there are moments I do tend to go towards more the horrific things with a slight touch of comedy, but I always try to challenge myself. Okay, I've done that. Now let me try to go write a Western just to see if I can find my own spin or if I can understand the rules of that genre and the dynamics that I need to execute that story properly, you know?
Mm-hmm.
All right, this is a question you guys may not be able to answer. But there's folks that'll be watching this and folks out here maybe asking themselves the same question. Once you've written the script, once you've honed it, once you've got it just the way you want it.
Never been there. Never been there.
How do you sell it? I mean, you know, that's a major part of how do you convert that into put it up on the screen.
I think there are two different paths to go. I mean, whether it's, if you're the independent person that's trying to make that movie yourself, you just have to get off your ass and go do it. Yeah. If you are trying to sell it for more money, you need a dramatic rights or a literary rights agent, right? And that's something, that way you have somebody in your corner. It's the same way as an actor needs an agent to get those auditions. It's a middleman that helps you bridge that gap that you as the average citizen don't really have the capability of doing. And I think the way to do that is it's the same, actually it's the same advice I would give to any actor, is build up your resume. Build up your credentials. Make sure that before the minute you walk in there, you have a skill set. You don't have to be perfectly honed. You can still be working on your screenwriting skills or your acting skills, but you have to walk into a room showing that you're capable of doing the job more than once. And I think that's important from a writing perspective or an acting perspective, directing anything.
Yeah, I've never written anything to sell it, actually. It's always been a means to an end. Well, I want to be in this. I want to be in this. So it was always, how do we make it? How do we make it? But I do have friends who do sell scripts. One of my friends has been writing for a long time, and the way he started selling scripts was somebody with a reputation really took a liking to his work. He shot a low-budget film, was able to get this guy involved in the film. That guy had a reputation in Los Angeles, said, I love this guy's work, passed his script off to his agent. His agent called him up, and it's a lot of word of mouth here. Again, work breeds work. If you're not creating and if you're not putting it out there, you're never, first of all, you're never going to reach the level of success that you're aiming for, whatever that is. So that's one way to do it. Another way, I have another friend, a guy named Vanden Gibbs, he might be the most technically sound, beautiful writer I know, and he's a great filmmaker, and he's local here. And I got to meet him 8 years ago in a short film, and I was reading all his scripts, and I'm like, how are you not writing for Spielberg and these people? And the way he went about it and continues to go about it is he was very prolific in screenwriting festivals. And I was like, what's going to really happen? But he started winning or placing top 3, top 5, top 10 in every screenwriting festival he'd enter, and some of the bigger ones. And just last week, after all this time, he was flown out to LA was top 5 in a very large screenwriting festival, and was introduced to a slew of agents there. So again, it's just, persistence is key. Really, really is. As long as you're doing it, you're doing it. It's weird. The definition of success in this business of filmmaking, whether you're in acting or directing or whatever, it's so subjective. People are going to look at you, and if you don't have a big house and you don't have a fancy car, and they're going to look at you as, if they don't know who you are, they're going to think, oh, poor you. But you're doing it, and as long as you're doing it, you're judged by your actions. If you're writing, you're a writer. If you're acting, you're an actor. If you're directing, you're a director. So there's no right or wrong here, and there's no guarantees. The better you are at anything, you got to put it out there. And if you don't, it's never going to be seen. So.
And like, in the end of the day, there's a million ways to drive to Marietta. Like, there's no just one solid path to get there.
Actually, there is now.
Touche.
All the construction. Yeah.
But still, the idea that there is no formula that everyone can follow, because it is different for every single person out there about how you make it, how you succeed, whatever that definition is. The nature of the business is constantly changing too. So some writers are found by YouTube videos, or some writers are found through contests, or some writers, Kevin Smith's a perfect example, or Sam Raimi, of a person who wrote and directed their features and did it entirely themselves with the hope of finding distribution on the other end of it, and launched their writing careers, so it's finding something that's working for you in that moment, I think, is the best.
I think the beauty of this industry is the work that's done very well is there for you to see. You can download and read the best screenplays ever written, and go and analyze them.
Blacklist is a perfect website to go check out everything.
You can watch the best movies ever made and go, okay, worst case scenario, I can set the camera up like Spielberg set the camera up. I can light it. I can try to light it like Spielberg lit it. I could, you can look at the greatest actors and go, okay, I may not know how they got there, but I know where they got to. How do I retroactively get there? And there are steps. And the beauty of art is there are steps to getting better at it. Ultimately, if you're great at it, nobody sees the steps. It's like dancing. If you're shitty at it, we see the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Right. If you're great at it, it just looks like this beautiful thing. But that comes from doing it over and over, and muscle memory and working. And there is structure to screenwriting, and there are different structures. But you need to try all of them. Whether you're reading Save the Cat or 21 Days How to Write It or a story by Bob McKee. I mean, it all works if it works for you, and it's there for you to try. But you have to do the work, and you have to crumple up a shitload of paper, and because writing is rewriting. It's never you never pump it out on the first try, and if you do, you're lying to yourself.
I had this awesome film class in college where we took the Oscar-winning screenplays, original screenplays, or adapted screenplays, and then compared them to the actual film that was made of them, and saw the scenes that were missing, and the dialogue that was different, and the scenes that weren't even in the script, and all of that stuff, to see the difference of what that is, that thing that we exalt as being the best there is, but that's not actually what the movie was. And it's a very interesting thought to think that even when the script is good enough to win, it wasn't the perfect script. And that sort of, for me at least, relieves a lot of the stress and the pressure about, just do it instead of worrying about how perfect it is.
And if any of you have ever written anything and have screenwriting software, any screenwriting software, you realize they offer you different colors, and that's for the rewrite. And there's an endless array of colors because it's constantly being rewritten. It's never just been vomited out and you do it. It's always changing. I remember the last time I was hired on a job where the script that I got to shoot was even remotely close to what ultimately I ended up shooting by the end of the day, because it evolves. It's a living, breathing thing, and it really is a butterfly effect. Once you put it up, it changes. It really does. So you have to be malleable. You don't have to sacrifice your vision, but you have to be malleable to the things that are thrown at you as well. So.
All right, one thing before and we'll open this up for Q&A. Influences, mentors, people that greatly that you greatly admired and tried to to use as an influence in your writing careers?
Keith Brooks. Yeah, sure.
Fuck up.
That's what he said about you.
That's
He
right.
was saying Rob Prog here earlier, so. Yeah.
But Keith's never fired himself from a job. I fired myself from a writing job one time. I was like, I can't do this. I'm fired. I hired him.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of Tarantino's work. It seems it ties together, and there's always a level of urgency, and the way he deals constantly challenging his characters with conflict over and over. It's never over. They're constantly having to climb over that wall, and it looks so simple. If you look at his pages of dialogue, it's so little in the action, and he doesn't overwhelm you with having to read all. It's just, what is the character going through next? What gauntlet does he have to overcome, regardless of the story? But there's so many.
I love, one of the things I love about Tarantino so much, it's in The Hateful Eight, there's a section where he breaks the movie into chapters, and there's a section where he narrates it. And the fact he feels free enough to do that he's established what the rules are, and fuck it, I'm gonna break them, but I'm gonna make it make sense for a second. That is courageous writing to me, and courageous filmmaking, and I love that idea. Like, to me, it's Rod Serling and Robert Bloch are some old school screenwriters that I just adore. I love. I'm a theater kid, and so William Shakespeare's ability to do anything, to know. The thing about William Shakespeare was that he made romances and histories and comedies, and we all know that, but he made ghost stories too about statues coming to life and molesting people, and that's some weird shit, but that's what the man could do. And same thing with Rod Serling. It's any genre's up for grabs. Let me see how far my brain can go, and I want to be that. That's always my goal and my challenge.
Interesting. Serling was a huge influence. I grew up in the same part of the country, 20 miles from his home,
awesome.
and he was the guy.
Yeah.
Still is.
Yeah.
All righty, let's open it up to the audience here. Any questions you have for Rob or Keith here about screenwriting?
If you had like a specific actor in mind? I think specific vision is good no matter what. If there's an actor who you are a fan of, and you hear that specific actor's voice, and you have a story in mind for them, I think you can write in that actor's voice. I don't think there's one thing or another. I think it's difficult no matter what, because writing story is not easy, and you've got to, again, you have to have a specific vision, because if you don't, it's like a director without a shot list, man. You're going to get a shitload of stuff, and none of it's going to piece together. You're going to spend 1,000 years, and you're going to wind up with 47 hours for a 90-minute zombie movie. Sorry, that was a little.
Are we thinking back? Oh, okay, yeah.
I don't think any of it's easy. What about you?
I mean, to me, it's like I think the question gets complicated because I'm an actor. So by wearing multiple hats at the same time, it kind of complicates my job. And I mean that as if I'm writing something with the intention of directing it myself, I know what shots are going to go. I'm already thinking about the edit, and that helps me to some degree, but at the same time, I'm very closed-minded while I'm doing it, right? As an actor that's writing something, I want each part to have this juiciness. And I want, even if I know the actor I want to do it, I want to write in their cadence, but I also want to challenge them because that's what I would want as an actor. So maybe the way I challenge them isn't the way they can live up to that challenge, if that makes sense. But that makes it a complicated moment, you know what I mean? If I'm writing for Rob Prago, I know his back.
Less dialogue.
Yeah, less dialogue. His back's gonna hurt a lot. Oi. And if I try to challenge him to do some improvisation, we're fucked, right? But I think as a writer or as an actor, that's going to be an interesting element for it. It might not be in his wheelhouse if I push it too forward and I'm thinking about it too much. Does that make sense at all?
My range.
Yeah, it's just that.
Is about the width of a
lot of people say that about you.
Thank you. I'm home on a very small range. Thank you. Thank you very much. I wrote something a couple years ago. It was a short, and I wrote it for two specific actors, two friends of mine in mind. And it was the easiest thing I'd ever written. It was 4 or 5 pages long. Two completely different type of actors. One who I had to work for literally 3-4 weeks, rehearsal to make sure he was locked solid, because he just wasn't as comfortable in his own skin, but he was perfect for the part. And one who was sort of a tiger by the tail, improvisational, very spontaneous, wild man. And I didn't give him the script, because I wanted him to kind of just play and riff on it a little bit. And I thought it worked out flawlessly. We shot one day, had a great time. The problem was, as the writer and the director, I fell in love with every take. So I said, I'm going to knock this edit, literally 4 or 5 pages. I'll have the edit cut in 3 days. This was in August. February, I knock on Keith's door. I go, hey man, remember that thing you told me you wouldn't mind cutting for me? Well, I can't make any decisions because I fell in love with all my children and I can't kill any of them. He goes, ta-da, the great director? Yeah. He goes, you moron. He goes, give me. I give him the drive. 48 hours later, here's your stupid-ass movie. Thank you, blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh, yay, thank you, wonderful. He had no problem killing my children. But again, he was able to be objective. It's hard sometimes to be subjective over your stuff, too, so you have to allow and be open to people who are objective, too. So allow yourself. We get very close to our things. We think our stuff. That being said, don't compromise your vision. You don't have to compromise.
Yeah.
Compromising is giving up something to get something else. It's not compromising if somebody better than you goes, I think this might be better, and you go, you know, you're right, that is better.
And that malleability.
That's just learning and growing,
Yeah.
and that's different.
And it's also like being, and again, it goes back to that complication factor, being the fact that we're both actors. We work with all these other actors that we're working with still, you know? And so I can write something for an actor and have it in my mind that they're going to do it this way, that, oh, I know they're going to do it this way. But then if I get into the actual performance and they change it, and they try to do something different, I run the risk of resenting that performance. You know what I mean?
What are you saying?
No, I'm sure you're gonna do fine. But that's something. But that's when that malleability, and that's often why I think a lot of writers try to step away, unless you're talking about television. But they try to step away from the process and all that jazz.
No, I think that's valid. My experience was more in stage work where I was directing a person's work. Brilliant script. Too long. And for stage, I had to cut it down about a half an hour. And unfortunately, he was there for the rehearsals until we could get rid of him so that I could direct the show. And it was heading to off-Broadway after I had the privilege of directing his show. But I mean, yeah, you get too close.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You really got. I think it's
your baby. You give birth
I think
to
if
the
you
ideas,
write,
you're
I think if
protective
you
of
write
it.
a script, it's hard to act in it. But I think it's easier to act in a script you've written than direct a script that you've written, or edit a script that you've written. And I think we both had similar experiences with friends of ours who've tried to wear all three of those hats, and it's a disaster.
Sure.
I mean, it's an absolute disaster. So I think you did a very valid point there.
And it doesn't have to be a disaster. I've seen
No, it doesn't.
writers direct and star in things that were very good. I mean,
Yeah.
Edward
Edward G.
Costner
Wood
does it well.
Jr.
Mel Gibson does it well. You know, it's
Ben Affleck, yeah.
does it very well, and it could be done well on a low budget, on a micro budget stage too. But you've got to fail a couple times and realize what needs to be done in pre-production, and you got to dot your I's and you got to cross your T's, and you have to be prepared. You have to have pre-visualized and shot listed and storyboarded it, so you don't have to worry about it. So you don't have to figure it out on set.
Well,
it has to be done in pre-production.
And sometimes that scene that you wrote initially that you thought this is going to be the most brilliant scene in the movie is the one that's the first one to go. Sometimes that happens.
Oh, yeah.
It
But I
doesn't
think
fit
it's-
with
sure.
everything else.
I think, I know he's in a lot of trouble right now and all that stuff, but I think James Gunn is a brilliant writer and a brilliant, theorist about this sort of stuff. Two things that he talks about is things playing a part, and I think that's an important thing to remember when you're doing the writing, the acting, and the directing. You have to remember and have a bigger picture to think about what this character means to the story. If you're acting for the sake of winning the Oscar, fuck off. You don't need to be acting to begin with. You need to think about what this character means to that story and that film and how it makes everything progress. Yeah. The second thing he talks about a lot is tone, and that for me as a screenwriter is a huge thing. I have to figure out the tone of my story. What type of story do I want? Then I figure out the tone of the characters. And then by knowing the tones of those characters, when those two characters meet, they have different tones, it then defines the tone of my scene. And that's the same thing of like, if I look at a movie, what characters can make a joke? And what characters can make what specific type of jokes? Is it out of character for one character to make a knock-knock joke? Would they rather make a dirty joke? What feels more honest and truthful to them? I realize that on some level, as a writer, I have the godlike power to say, well, it's just fucking this. But sometimes that doesn't feel honest. Sometimes that doesn't feel like what the story's asking me to do with it, you know? And finding those two things, how does this play a part? What is the tone? What is this supposed to feel like? That, like, Batman should not fart on his villains. Like, that's just a thing that shouldn't happen. Zack Snyder. But that, you know.
Well, that's amazing thing about the Avengers and everything, how especially in 3, how they, in the process, how they had to sit back and go, well, what characters work well together? What's the chemistry of these characters? Not just the story, but who can we piece together?
And which ones can make quips and what kind of quips? One of the best sequences of writing ever, and if you haven't seen the movie, fuck off, it's been out for a couple months, is when Thor comes in and is like, this is my friend Tree, and Groot says, I am Groot, and Steve Rogers says, I am Steve Rogers. And it's such a brilliant moment because in just 3 lines of dialogue, you get who everybody is with these quips that are perfectly suited to those individual characters and feel like unique voices. And it's just, McFeely and whatever his name is, they're just brilliant at their job.
Anyone else? Anyone have a question for these two gentlemen up here?
What do actors fail to realize? If you're starting off as an actor and then you want to make a movie, where do you fail? Where do you...
So you've kind of seen this from all different angles, right? So if you have an actor who's not directed or written, what do you think that the actor does not see that you have seen?
I think you just said it perfectly, seeing it from all angles. It's the fact that when you're directing, it's your job to understand what that camera does, how that camera can be used. It's your job to be able to communicate with the sound person on a sound person's level, with the actors on an actor's level, with the costumer on a costume's level. When you're acting, you're thinking about a central idea, and that's you. That's your character. That's what your arc is, what your motivation is, right? When you're directing or when you're writing, you're thinking about building that entire world, and you have to change your ability to communicate multiple times in multiple different fashions. I know for me, when I'm directing, I want every crew member to have confidence that I know enough about their job to ask for things. You know what I mean? I don't want them to think I know more about their job than them, because I don't. But I want them to feel comfortable enough in my confidence, you know, and that is a very specific thing.
And I would say what I've learned over the years is the director's job is to understand what the audience is supposed to feel at any given moment. That's not the actor's job. The actor's job is to manipulate the obstacle in front of him in every given moment. So when you start directing, you realize, okay, the scene's a scene, but if I put the camera here, it feels one way. If I put the camera back in a wider angle, it feels another way. If I'm shooting it in tight close-ups, it feels another way. If I'm shooting it in dirty singles, it feels another way. And you're like, oh shit, I'm overwhelmed by the choices I can do. So again, it takes time, and you have to study film and watch the differences. I watch movies of how is the director making me feel right now with this shot, with this color palette, with the silences. That's the difference. As an actor, if we're doing a scene, all I give a shit about is you. As a director, I care about everything in this room within 200 yards. The sound, the scope, the lens, because everything is a linchpin. If one thing goes wrong, it doesn't work. And in the scene, if one thing goes wrong, I just move forward, we do the scene again as the actor. So it's, I don't want to give more priority than the other. Every job is so important, and it's starting with the script, because without the script, we're not here. So back to screenplay writing, we're not here. So as the writer, I have to understand that my characters need motivation, my characters need obstacles, my characters need purpose, and a purpose maybe that an audience can relate to. because if the audience can't relate to it, nobody's going to watch this movie anyway. So there's so much to it. I mean, I'm babbling.
I mean, no, I think you're right. I think every single one of those jobs is about choices and interpretation, right? So, and I think you could think of it as a sandwich. The writer comes in with the script, which is the foundation we're going to build everything on. He makes initial choices and interprets what this world and story should be. An actor then reads that and has a further interpretation, which is the meat, the cheese, whatever the fuck you put on it. And then it's the director's job to sort of cap that all off and say, these are the confines. This is where we're going to go. But again, that's an interpretation. Again, that's a choice. I just think if you stick to one of those fields, you lose sight of all the others. You know what I mean? And to make a film work, all of those, plus all the other departments have to be working together.
Sure. I believe the director needs to understand everything. I think you can get through successfully if everybody does stay in their lane and understands that the director is the overall visionary, and we signed on to do that. If my actors are just working on the craft of acting, and everybody understands what everybody else is doing and stays out of their way and lets everybody do their job. Again, that's lucky to be on a set where everybody is doing their job to their utmost, because you're dealing with people and things happen. So as a director and a producer, you also have to be able to micromanage, and you have to be able to put out fires and schmooze, and because things happen. It's a living, breathing thing. And I think like you said before, you come up with an idea for a story. That's great. Then you write something that's based on that, but it's not quite the same thing. And then you rewrite, and it changes again. And then you start rehearsing, and it starts changing because actors are now involved. And you start seeing it through camera, and it starts changing because the camera sees it differently and changes how we feel about it. And then you shoot it, and you make discoveries on set because it's now post-rehearsal, and the actors are off book, and now they're just living in the moment. Things are changing based upon how they're provoking each other. And then you finish it. And now you have to make the movie again in post, and now it's edited because you have all these wonderful pieces. So now, again, I don't know from where it starts to where it finishes. It's the same story. It's not the same story. But it's grown, and I can't say it's not better, it's not worse. It's matured. It's like your child growing up. It's
like every choice contributes to that final product and changes it. Like Alien is a wonderful example of a script that was written with a male lead, right? That movie, if you read the script, plays one very specific way. Then you actually take the actors in and the direction of Ridley Scott, and that becomes something. But then when you take it to post, not only is there silence, but they take out sounds. Sounds of clanks and stuff like that, so you feel empty, so you feel alone. So now that movie has been reinterpreted again in post-production, and that just shows you that every layer the film goes through changes it. It changes the way we feel about it, and that's one of the most amazing things about film or any art, is that it is a collaborative, constantly evolving thing.
But it doesn't mean you're compromising either. It's still your vision. If you're the writer, director, and you're finishing, and the editor, it's still your vision. It grows as you grow. You know, more things get thrown on. There's more spice. You're learning as you go along, but it's still your vision. And just because it changes doesn't mean you're compromising. It just means it's growing. So.
It's like being a parent watching children grow up.
Thank God I wouldn't know.
I don't either, but I'm just guessing that
my
must
dogs.
be.
I got my dogs.
That's what it feels like to be a parent, I think.
Excellent.
Is there anyone else that has a question?
Bored them all.
Gentlemen,
That's right.
it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
We're at the Something Wicked Film Festival 2018. We'll see you at the
Jim
next
Adams,
panel.
ladies and gentlemen. Jim Adams. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.